anybody have any specific questions for our gallant presenters? Yeah, okay, it's lady here, and then the lady behind, and then one behind that.
Okay, I'm Jane Brown from National Records of Scotland. I have a question for Fionnuala. Some of the other speakers spoke about the courses being accredited by sort of professional bodies. Are they RG just a
yeah, CILIP accredits the ILS and IM.
Okay.
We're quite interested in specific industry bodies. For example, the Petroleum Data Management course that I developed, the group that we developed it with, they're the de facto professional body. It's really not mature enough to qualify as a professional body yet, so we would go after them as the accreditor once they exist.
Okay, yeah.
So we would be quite interested in industry-specific accreditation and where the audience sees value in that. But yeah, CILIP accredits the existing ones.
I have a question for Alan. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat. I'm one of the Skills for the Future trainees, so I'm going to be coming onto the closed course. Now, I'm thinking about doing a 20 credit module instead of a 10 credit module. It's something that I've discussed with my mentor at NRS, which is where I'm based. I was just wondering, do you have to commit to a certificate or a diploma or a master's, or can you embark on a module and decide further along how far you want to
Yes,
go?
you can. So if you, not to focus on your specific circumstances, but in generality, if you register as a CPD student and you do a module, or do a couple of modules, and you think, right, this is the very thing for me, I'm all set, then you can transition and register as a programmatic student, for want of a better phrase, on the masters or one of the other programs. If you've done the assessments, as some other colleagues said as well, and you've passed the modules when you were registered as a CPD student as well, they are all conform to the credit qualifications framework, as you've seen from all of us. That's what that SCQF Level 11 thing is. So you can take those credits, provided you've done okay, and put those towards the degree. What I will say though is, if you are thinking of doing that, please let my colleagues know, because they'll look at that and they'll advise you on how many modules you can do and how many things you can put towards credits within the university rules, which I'm afraid I don't know offhand, but my colleagues in the office absolutely do. So ring them and kind of talk over what your options might be. But if you want to kind of dip your toe in the water, that's absolutely possible. Yeah.
I think there was one other question on this side of the house. Perhaps not. Okay. Anybody else? Good question. Yeah, Ali.
So I've actually kind of selfishly get to put the agenda for this forward, and for my own needs, I was thinking that so I did my masters at University of Glasgow through the HATI programme, but I would quite like to be able to dip in and out of lectures in some sense, of either coming on campus for a day or webinars. So how kind of geared up for you? Adele, you kind of touched on that you can actually come along for the day. So are the timetables available online so that you could maybe see, right, I know that a Tuesday I could get myself through to Glasgow for the day and then park that out? And also to everybody as well, how geared up are you for potentially starting to do webinars that you can either dip into for a fee or for free?
Well, I'll say a little bit about RGU on that. That would be one of the things that we would respond to the market on. Our virtual learning environment is Campus Moodle, and we do have virtual classroom facilities, and you don't need to have an RGU network ID to access that. You can access that as a guest, so we could run where you can see the speaker, you can see the slides. If people have their webcams enabled, you can see them as well, and you can do a bit of collaboration in that. So we do have the facility to run particular webinars if there is a market for it.
We're just going down the line here. Yeah. In our case, there are sample module materials we can provide to put with it being an online program. We do various, I mean I didn't go into all this, but we do bespoke solutions with people. We've done training provision depending on what's been needed. We can do blended approaches for that where necessary. We can put things together for specific needs if there's a demand, and we'll go and do things like this. We'll kind of talk to people, and we can do short sessions and so on where we know that's needed. We don't obviously have a room that you can walk into and sit at the back of because we don't have a room. But what we have done is I'm trying to think how many. At least 4, possibly 5 international conferences we've held in Dundee at various times, which are made available to anyone in the profession advertised. The IRMS actually sponsored the last one, which was very kind of them. So the capacity is there for engagement in kind of the way that anybody wishes to engage with us. We're more than happy to do that. And having kind of guest access to things for a short term, so you can maybe see an element of something, or we can send you some of our materials so you can get a feel for how it works, and so on and so on. All that's possible. It's just a case of us understanding what colleagues would like, and then kind of trying to move on from there in a way that benefits everybody.
We're quite similar to RGU in the setup. At the moment, we haven't routinely offered webinars about lectures, for example, but if there were a need for that, if people were requesting that, then I think that's probably something the university would definitely want to look at going forward. In terms of timetabling, we can let you know on what days things are taught. It changes slightly year on year, but most courses would still be the same, because that's just how the room bookings work. So if someone were interested in taking a course on CPD, then we said, right, well that will be taught on a Monday, and so that enables you then to get your work timetable sorted out if you're wanting to come along as a CPD or day release student.
So all of our timetables are available online, but not very far in advance, because there's issues to do room bookings and capacity and things like that. Our timetables are at the moment driven by our full-time students. So our library students, for example, go on placement 1 day a week with Glasgow Live. So we try to give them 1 day set aside for that, plus then 1 other day. So everything is sort of bunched in together. So there's kind of bunches of lectures and activities, which in some ways helps if you want to come for 1 day just to do a course. In terms of webinars, making things available online, we have all of the infrastructure available. So other departments within the university already make materials based online, teach entire modules online. We have different webinar software that we use for marketing to international students and making things available live internationally and afterwards. So the infrastructure is there. It's just at the moment we've got some courses that we're preparing to make deliver online, but not all of them. So if there's an appetite or anything in particular that as a group or any group approaches and said, yeah, we've got a real number of people who want to do this, then that will go to the top of the list for the things that are going to be available online. So it's possible, but maybe not there just yet. But something we're really interested in.
Question over there for sure.
Joe Chapman, speaking with my IRMS communications officer hat on, I kind of want to say hold that thought, because one of the things we're looking at doing is something like that, where we have kind of outside webinars or things that people can dip into. I think that if there is an appetite, and that's something that's one of the purposes of today, is to gauge whether there's an appetite for that. So potentially good for professionals, it gives them flexibility and a real kind of taste of what the courses are like and what they involve, and could be beneficial potentially for universities to get that kind of sense out there as well. So that's something I want to talk about.
Could I add briefly as well, if anyone wants to kind of, it's not module materials, but it's not so far removed from it that you wouldn't get an idea of what's there. My colleague Caroline Brown and myself were supported by the ICA to make a wee ebook 2 or 3 years ago now, actually, how time flies, and that's available via the iBook store if you have an Apple Gizmo, or via the ICA website. as a PDF if you don't, and that's called the Record Keeper's Bookshelf, and that was us trying to bring some themes together about various record keeping issues. So for anyone who just wants to kind of maybe start to just dip their toe a little bit back into this, then there's it's not full master's level, obviously it's lighter than that, but there is a thing you can have a look at and just maybe start to think about some of the things. What I will say though is there are links in that, and as I say, it's a couple of years old now, so if the links have changed, I'm really sorry, because as you all know, the internet is a fiendish place and things move around. So.
Just one more thing on the bite-sized sort of thing. So we do occasionally, so it's not something we plan. It's like every year we do this, but if there particular new technology or something that's available, if there's an appetite for that, sometimes we run one-off events. Let's say sponsored by the Scottish Informatics and Computer Science Alliance. We have events sponsored by the EU, whatever it is, where it's a 1 or 2 day workshop or come and learn about this and that. Whether it's machine, whether it's something that's cloud-based, sometimes they can be things that are less technologically driven, but quite often they're more on the computer science side of things. But quite often they're available for free. So if people wanted to know about those, then I could pass along information to Ali or whatever it is that lets everybody listen.
I think that actually brings up a question for me about how we promote those things as well, because we've had this discussion a few times as IRMS Scotland about what's the best way of disseminating information. I think that most people, raise your hands if you're on the records management GISC list. So I think, oh, see, there we go. So not many people are on it. That would be the way that we would tend to promote things. We've done our LinkedIn page, we've got Twitter feeds, but what is the platform so that when you've got, you know, a day to you're putting on a day or a webinar, where do you promote that? So maybe that's a discussion we can have in our groups as well when we go into our breakout about where we would expect to see those things, where we want to see those things, because you know, I don't think you can put it in one place and hit all, but what are the key platforms for us to get that information out there?
You should say as well, if IRMS or ARA or SILIP or whomever it might be are doing things that might be of relevance to the kind of wider communities attached to the courses. I presume speaking for us all here, I know we do it at Dundee, but we'll happily tell, you know, kind of people who are attached in some way to us, so students and tutors and so on, that you know, there is a thing like today. So if we, you know, that dialogue's important both ways. If you guys have something that you want kind of our communities to know about, then I'm sure all the universities are happy to pass that on, because it's an opportunity for the, you know, students and tutors and extended community from all the programmes.
I would say as well that's quite important data for us as universities to gather, because I focus on CPD. I fight quite a bit with marketing who have a focus on undergraduate bachelor's courses. They're really keen on Facebook marketing. Facebook is not really the best platform to be promoting CPD. It's a different audience and engages in different ways. So if I can get feedback from you today on that, then it's from you who are legitimate people, and my opinion is not legitimate. I'm just a lecturer.
Thank you. And a final question just here.
Hi, I'm just going to ask us and throw it out there. 10 years ago I did a qualification in Information and Library Studies, which I finished with RGU but started at the University of Wales. As you're all offering CPD courses, 10, 20 credit courses, how favourably would you look on someone that had maybe done 20, 40 credits with Glasgow, say, but then wanted to complete with RGU, a certificate or a postgraduate diploma?
The SCQF, which is the Scottish Credit Qualification Framework, means that if you have university credits, you can take those credits and do things with them somewhere else, subject to the requirements of the institution to whom you wish to move to and the ones from where you wanted to go. So there is actually portability built into the overarching framework that governs this in Scotland, but that's obviously subject to local requirements and all the usual application rules and so on and so on. So.
Yeah, so you just need to have a look at the curriculum which you'd followed before to make sure that you weren't, say if you've done digital creation, then it might not be appropriate for you to do digital creation again and get more credits for actually essentially studying the same thing. So we need to make sure that your curriculum was balanced throughout, but that would be done on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah,
and
so
we'd
possible
sort of
demo.
discuss, so we'd just discuss with you what you felt you wanted to do and why, and how you felt that was complemented by your previous study. But yeah,
I think this interoperability is something that's a really good thing to see in the current provision. We've just got one point from Mike.
Sure. Mike Bissell in IRMS Immediate Past Chair. Just as again a flag up of stuff that's coming, although some of these might not yet. An initiative I'm working on is a higher education initiative. We started it last year, we're rolling it forward a little bit. Done a little bit of work with Dundee on this already, but in terms of our bulletin, which comes out to IRS members every 2 months, which is our 1,000 members, we're very keen to work with you guys on features, on stuff that we're doing. Also, we ran a student diary piece from a Dundee student. We'd like to do that with other courses as well. So it starts to build those bridges and starts to build the cognizance, especially of RGU and stuff by this instance, I think. Because I think the stuff is perhaps lesser known in our community, but also with the established courses as well. So something I was hoping to catch up with over the course of today. So.
And of course, as we are all perhaps achingly aware, the IRMS conference is coming to Glasgow next year. So again, another opening opportunity for you guys to get a really good interface with the IRM community at an international level, not just a national one. So again, that's something to think about. Submissions are still being accepted for that, so please use that opportunity. Okay, right.
Just one more question.
Oh, sorry, one more. I do
That's okay.
apologise.
I was just going to say, like for someone who's not studied, say, for 15 years, and you come to decide to do some of the courses that are available, how do you know if you're actually at the right level to be able to tackle stuff at new study levels? Because what was in the past might not be, what you studied in the past might not be at the same level as what you're studying now. Is there tasters, or because you don't want to pay for something that you're then not at a level for?
Did everybody hear that question? It's all about skills evaluation and the sort of academic level that's required.
So I think part of that will be about having a dialogue. So if you're interested in something, you certainly in Strathclyde, I'm sure it's the same for everybody. You can approach us in advance and say, here's what I've done in the past. Do you think it will be appropriate? And we're not going to say, oh yeah, you should come and do it because we really want the money. It is going to be, I mean, it's no good if we do that and you go and say, well, that was a waste of time and a waste of money and time. We want people to have a good experience and really learn something from the courses. We design ours so that, again, people come from a variety of backgrounds, and it's not unusual to have people who, a degree 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago worked for a while and then said, well, I want to get some new skills or whatever it is, and then come and do our courses. So we're geared up to do that, and we don't normally, we're assuming a sort of a base level, and then we work from that. So people from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of experiences can come and really do any of our modules. And our curriculum is set up so that there isn't any requirements, so you can do one without, you don't have to do this before you can do that, so you can take bits and pieces independently.
Yeah, and there's help. I'm sure the other universities are the same, that there is help available. So things like we've got really good student learning service, and we have them along in our orientation week to talk to all of our new students. But they run workshops and sort of group workshops, but also are very happy to meet with students on a one-to-one basis, like either normally in a sort of advance of putting in a piece of work, it's the first piece of work that someone might have written for perhaps 30 years, and just going through with them the requirements, and that's done entirely separately from the academic staff who teach the programme that you're doing. And I think that's quite important, because then you can show something and not be worried that it's going to colour somebody's opinion who might be marking your final piece. And that's all of that is part of what you pay for. All of that help, all of those university support services are all part of the package. So, but actually, I think people who've been out of study for a while tend to be quite nervous about that. But if you've been in work and you've been reading and you've been writing reports and operating on a professional level, then I think people worry, but it tends to be quite needless, because without really realising it, you've been operating at that level anyway, and you've been developing and improving challenging your skills?
I'd echo all of that. And obviously from a distance point of view, online learning and so on can be a little bit add an additional level of concern, because you might not be in the building where you can knock on a door and go in. But all the sort of institutional student support stuff is available to anyone who's an enrolled student. So if you're a distance learning student, you're just as much a student at the university as someone who's, an undergraduate who's in a lecture theatre. And additionally, that we have, everybody will have student handbooks and guidance and so on and so on and so on. In our case, we call that a resource centre, where we put all sorts of things in that are there to support you, self-help on academic writing styles, on references and bibliographies, on kind of how to approach study if you've been out for a little while. So all these things are there. And you've got as I said, the tutors are all, it's supported online learning, and you've got a direct line to your tutor, and you've got a direct line to my colleagues in the School of Humanities as well. So, there is a sort of matrix of student support available. We don't just throw 13 weeks of stuff at you and say, right, we'll hear from you at the end for your assignments. You're supported all the way through, and you're brought through the module materials by certain waypoints that we have. So you are in regular contact with your tutor. And we do look to see if people have fallen off the map as well, because people fall ill and life happens and all that kind of stuff. And again, these are all support mechanisms that colleagues in other institutions will have too. So I think if you've been out of it for a little while, it's like anything, kind of new things are often daunting, change is hard, all the things that we would talk about, but don't let the fact that you've been removed from study for a little while put you off dipping your toe in the water at least.
What I would say there is, if all of these mechanisms are there for your assurance as much as because you need them, these courses are for you, whether you graduated last year or 30 years ago. So if there is a mismatch there, the problem is with us and we want to know about it. It's nothing to do with the audience not being capable of the courses. The courses are for you.
Right, Carl, yes.
Last question. None of you talked about fees. I'm not going to hand it with you. But I just wonder, one of us as an institution is offering 2 or 3 individuals who wanted to enroll in a course, whether options for discounts. Yes or no, please?
So should I just repeat the question in case not everybody heard it? That was a question about fees and whether if there's a kind of discount for group bookings, essentially. Tutor by the dozen and all of that.
Okay, I'll go for it. That's not my decision to make, but there's probably a discussion could be had.
I think I'd say the same from the Glasgow point of view. They deliberately don't let academic staff have anything to do with fees and so on, probably quite rightly. It's not a question that I'm aware, I'm sure it has been asked before, but I'm not aware of the answer, so you would have to ask. I think
Again, I'll echo that. There's conversations can be had, and it's always worth opening a conversation. I think none of us will have put fees up on the slide simply because fees change, and what we put up today might not be where it is next year and the year after, and so on and so on and so on. But we all publish our fees, so they are all there if you go and look for them. But yeah, I think it's fair to say institutions will listen to conversations and make a judgment on the basis of them. So by all means, and I think that is often prudent, shall we say.
So again from RGU, the question has been asked, particularly in CPD previously, and that my awareness of it was that the variables that the university wants to know about. So how many students are you talking about? Are you talking about all in a single cohort or spread over several intakes? And what kind of discount are you looking for? Is 1%?
Okay, well on that helpful and optimistic note, we're ready to move on to the next section, but can I just ask you to thank our speakers once again for that really helpful